Samurai, the most feared warriors in Japan, ate like this: cold rice, pickled plum, nothing else, and they chose it. During the reign of Emperor Kanmu in the early Heian period, 781 to 806, Japanese society began to produce a new type of figure: men who detached themselves from agricultural production and instead devoted their lives entirely to martial training. These men would become the earliest form of the samurai class. Over the next 4 centuries, these warriors, initially attached to the aristocracy, gradually grew in power. And with the Genpei War as their turning point, they finally stepped onto the central stage of Japanese history. At the forefront of this transformation stood the man who would define the era, Minamoto no Yoritomo, half-brother of the legendary Minamoto no Yoshitsune, the first Sei Taishogun in Japanese history, and the founder of the Kamakura shogunate. His rise was extraordinary, from an exiled criminal in Izu to a military leader who advanced westward and ultimately unified the country. He became the first Kamakura lord. And from the very beginning, Yoritomo established a fundamental rule that would shape the next 700 years of Japanese governance. The samurai class must not live in luxury. This principle became the foundation of what we now call Kamakura-era austere food culture. One of the most extreme examples appears about half a century later. Hojo Tokiori, the 5th regent of the Kamakura shogunate, once hosted his general Hojo Tokifusa late at night. There was no proper food available, so they drank sake, with nothing but a single dish of miso. Even earlier, during Yoritomo's time, we already see clear examples of this simplicity. Among the gokenin, his direct vassals, a standard meal often consisted of coarsely milled rice, polished to only about 70%. This kind of rice had a unique quality. The more you chewed it, the more its natural sweetness emerged. Because of this, umeboshi, pickled plums, originally used in Buddhist cuisine to stimulate appetite, became one of the earliest foods favored by the Kamakura samurai. This habit continued through the Sengoku warriors and into the Edo period, until umeboshi became a nearly universal breakfast food among common people. Even in modern Japan, it is still regarded as a key to longevity. On Yoritomo's own table, one of the earliest praised delicacies was something called kiwari. This was fish meat cut into thin strips, then dried. When eaten, it would be shaved into small pieces with a knife. There is a recorded story. When Yoritomo traveled to the capital and stayed at Kikugawa Station in Totomi Province, his retainer Sasaki Moritsuna presented him with dried salmon prepared in this way. He carefully placed it in a wooden box and instructed, "Please shave and eat it immediately." Yoritomo was deeply impressed. He praised it repeatedly, and even composed a poem about it. This shows just how valuable such dried seafood was on the Japanese table at the time. This technique, drying seafood first, then shaving it for consumption, later developed into a distinct culinary category in Japan, kizurimono. The most famous example today is katsuobushi, dried bonito flakes. But beyond that, there were also dried abalone, dried sea cucumber, all of which are extremely rich in glutamate, giving them deep umami flavor. These became highly prized foods in Japanese cuisine. Not long after Yoritomo established this austere food culture, a Buddhist monk named Eisai, who had traveled to China twice, introduced a new way of drinking tea to Japan: matcha. Unlike earlier tea forms such as dancha or sencha, matcha involved grinding tea leaves into powder and dissolving them directly into hot water. This method gained popularity quickly, and one key figure in that process was Minamoto no Sanetomo, Yoritomo's son, and the third shogun. According to the historical record Azuma Kagami, in the year 1214, Sanetomo once suffered from severe alcohol intoxication. Aisai, upon hearing this, offered him what he described as a medicinal remedy, a large bowl of hot matcha. After drinking it, Sanetomo immediately felt refreshed. His headache eased, his mind cleared. With the endorsement of the shogun, Aisai's theory of tea as a health practice spread rapidly across Japan. His theory was based on the idea that the 5 internal organs correspond to 5 flavors: heart, bitter, liver, sour, lungs, pungent, spleen, sweet, kidneys, salty. However, the Japanese diet at the time contained very little bitterness. This imbalance, according to Aisai, could harm the heart. Matcha, with its refined, elegant bitterness, was the perfect remedy. As tea culture spread among the warrior class, another tradition followed with it: temple-based confectionery culture. Many of these foods originated in China, often as meat-based dishes, but were transformed in Japan into plant-based sweets. One example is yokan. Today it is a sweet, high-sugar jelly with a long shelf life. But originally it dates back to the Heian period, before Kamakura, where it was made using plant-based sweeteners and set into a jelly-like form. During the Kamakura period, new variations emerged: red bean, chestnut, sweet potato, matcha. Another example is manju. Originally a Chinese meat-filled bun, it was introduced to Japan by the monk Lin Jingyin in the late Kamakura period. It was then adapted into a sweet filled with red bean paste, perfectly suited to Japanese taste. Then there is somen. Its origins are debated, but one theory suggests it was brought back from China by monks during the Kamakura period. The word somen originally referred to something rope-like. But because the noodles were thin and white, the character gradually shifted to plain or simple. Today it is commonly eaten in summer, often served as flowing somen, a dish that combines cooling sensation with playful presentation. Other foods included kishimen, rolled pancakes, warm wheat cakes, and even udon. Now, one of Japan's 3 major noodle types was originally derived from Tang Dynasty food, and its name may trace back to the Chinese word wonton. As tea culture expanded, these temple foods increasingly moved from monasteries to samurai tables. And within the austere Kamakura lifestyle, a gentle, almost playful snack culture began to emerge. With the establishment of Yoritomo's government, Japan entered the Kamakura period with a more efficient political system. Agricultural productivity increased, and economic activity became more dynamic. However, because Yoritomo himself valued simplicity, early Kamakura society still strongly discouraged luxury. But even so, these newly risen warrior elites needed some form of release, and that outlet was alcohol. Along with it came a highly structured drinking ritual, san-san-kudo, 339. The system worked like this. When the first dish was served, the guest was given 3 cups of sake. After finishing them, the dishes were cleared. This was called the first round. Then a second dish was served, again with 3 cups. This was the second round, and finally a third. 3 rounds, 3 cups each, 9 cups in total. This structure became a core drinking tradition among the samurai class, and is still echoed today in ceremonial sake rituals in Japan. As for the food served during these rounds, a classic Kamakura combination included freeze-dried jellyfish, noshi abalone. Smoked umeboshi. Jellyfish was typically salted, dried, and later rehydrated into a cold dish. By the early Edo period, it was also prepared with vinegar or in clear broth. Noshi abalone was made by tearing abalone into strips and drying it. Originally used in ritual offerings, it later became a luxury gift and a high-status dish. Because of its symbolism of extension and longevity, it was often eaten before battle. Other common dishes included shrimp, with premium varieties such as is lobster, kuruma shrimp, sweet shrimp used in sushi. Another item was sobe. Its exact identity is debated, but the most convincing theory is that it was an early form of botamochi. This was made by steaming glutinous rice, pounding it, shaping it into balls, and coating it with red bean paste. However, at that time, sugar was extremely rare, so the bean paste was likely salty, not sweet. It was only in the mid-16th century, when Portuguese and Dutch traders introduced sugar in large quantities, that this dish became sweet and evolved into what we now call botamochi. Returning to Hojo Tokiori, the regent who once served only miso with sake, in 1256, he handed over power to his relative Hojo Nagatoki, became a monk, and traveled across Japan. At one temple, he stayed overnight. The meal he was served was simply a plate of sobe. Even for a former ruler, this was considered a proper offering, which tells us everything. The Kamakura period was defined not by abundance, but by a return to simplicity. If this episode changed how you see the past, hit like and subscribe. Food Tales drops a new story every week, and the next one is already cooking.